Shalom, here we are in Jerusalem with Father Kevin Cable, who is a Jewish believer and priest of the Anglican Church. Can you give us, as a Jewish person living here, your view on what's happening here today with the war in the south and in the north?
Israel has always lived under the threat of being attacked, and you've only got to look at the history of Israel. I think for us, and my wife and I, like many Israelis, we were shocked on October the 7th at the level and the speed and the coordinated attack that took place. And I think it's for many people, it's really put a level of fear in them that may not have been there before. You know, Israel is the place that if you're Jewish, you come, you're safe. Now, you come here knowing that there are problems, there are tensions, there are terrorist attacks. Now, you could arguably say that any country in the world you're seeing that now. But what happened on October the 7th was at a completely different level. And I think the level of barbarity and just sheer, I mean, it was inhuman. You know, I wouldn't even call these people animals, Hamas. They're not animals. They're worse. They're the worst thing you can possibly imagine. And that is, I think the world doesn't quite understand. And again, this is just my opinion, that you can't do nothing. And again, this is just my own view. But you know, how do you respond to that? How do you respond when you've got people taken hostage? Women, children, elderly people, babies. You know, it's such a complex situation and issue, but for me, it has changed Israel. You know, now some people, when we came here, said you need to be aware that in the future there may be some sort of conflict, because periodically there is a conflict. And historically, since the formation of Israel in 1948, that's true, of course. You've got a number of periods of time where there's been conflict. But I don't think anyone ever expected this. Yes, there's always been the threat from Iran and Hamas, but not in the way that happened on October 7th. I mean, we were out in the field walking the dog at 6 a.m. when the attack began. And I will never forget that moment, as we had to decide whether we lay down on the ground as we heard the rockets getting closer to us, or get back in the car and try and get back to Tel Aviv. And we prayed about it, and there was a lull in the rocket fire. And it was the right decision that we prayed, because when we drove out of this country park we were in, laying on the ground near the entrance by the road was the remains of a rocket. Now, if we'd not stopped and prayed, who knows? But the point is, we then had to stop a number of times on the way back to Tel Aviv, you know, and I've got pictures on my phone of all the alerts of that morning. And this was just unprecedented. So it's shaken Israel to the core. And I think that people, everyone was affected by this. Everyone. Doesn't matter who you are. And it will have a lasting impact. How the country moves forward and how it heals itself, I think, is the big question at the moment.
And do you think that more people may be questioning God?
Absolutely. I mean, I know some people who are serving in the armed forces, and you know, they are questioning their own mortality. I mean, remember, you know, many of the people we know who are in their 20s, their 30s, with young children, men or women, they've been called up. You know, they've started families. They're building a life for themselves. They've done their military service. And now suddenly they're away from their families. They're in harm's way. And some of them won't come back. And they're faced with their own mortality. I think there's also the question of, when you look at how big Israel is in the Middle East, it's tiny. It's a tiny country here. And many of our neighbors are hostile. And so the realization that what happened on October the 7th, it could happen again, I think has made people question. Now, what's been really interesting to me is a friend of mine who knows several people that are serving at the moment in the army, has said that a lot of the young men are wearing now what we call Talit Katan, which is it's like a white undergarment with the tassels on. You know, now that's a religious piece of clothing, because those tassels are to remind a Jewish person of the fact that God is one and the 613 commandments of Torah. And you are starting to see a much deeper engagement in honoring Shabbat, prayer, turning back to God. And so I think that, and turning back to God is a good thing, because, you know, Israel, in many senses, there are many secular parts of Israel. Tel Aviv, probably the best example of that. But it's put a thought in people's minds, I think, that we need to turn back to the God of Israel.